The rain had been falling on the garage roof for 3 hours when the black sedan rolled in, its engine coughing like it was taking its last breath. Marcus Webb didn't look up right away. He was elbow deep in a '78 Chevy, the kind of work that paid the bills but never quite covered the rent on time. When he finally wiped his hands and stepped out, he saw a man in a suit that cost more than his monthly income, standing beside a car that had clearly given up on him 3 blocks too soon. "Can you look at this before Monday?" the man asked, not quite meeting Marcus's eyes. "I have somewhere I need to be." Marcus glanced at the engine, listened to the way it wheezed when he turned the key. "It'll take a few hours, no charge if you can't pay right away. Looks like you're having a week." The man in the suit almost laughed, though there was no humor in it. "You have no idea." What Marcus didn't know, what he wouldn't find out until 3 weeks later, standing in a marble lobby with his boots still smelling of motor oil, was that the man he'd just helped for free was the mayor of the city he'd lived in his entire life. And in 21 days, that same man would hand him the keys to something far bigger than a car. This is the story of how one broken-down engine on a rainy Tuesday changed everything. Marcus Webb was 44 years old, and he had been fixing cars since he was 14. His father taught him in a garage not much different from the one he ran now. Cinder block walls, a hand-painted sign out front, the smell of oil that never quite left your skin no matter how many showers you took. When his father died, Marcus inherited the shop along with $11,000 in back taxes and a roof that leaked in exactly the spot where he liked to keep his tools. He kept the shop open anyway, not because it made sense on paper. A chain garage had opened 2 miles down the road with better equipment and lower prices, but because closing it felt like losing his father twice. He worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7, and he'd learned to read people the way he read engines, by what they didn't say as much as what they did. The town he lived in, Ashford, had seen better days. The mill that used to employ half the county had closed a decade ago, and the people who stayed did what they'd always done, helped each other when they could, and quietly struggled when they couldn't. Marcus fixed a lot of cars for free that year. Mrs. Delaney's minivan when her husband lost his job. The Ortiz family's truck when their daughter needed braces instead. He never made a show of it, he just did it, the way his father had. Rebecca, his wife, worried about the books more than he did. "You can't run a charity, Marcus," she'd say, going through the ledger at their kitchen table. "You can't fix the whole town for free." "I'm not fixing the whole town," he'd say, "just the parts I can reach." It was a Tuesday in October when the black sedan pulled in, rain coming down in sheets, when the man introduced himself only as Grant and asked for a favor he clearly wasn't used to asking anyone. Marcus didn't recognize him. That was the truth of it, and it would matter later. James Grant had been mayor of Ashford for 6 years, but he wasn't the kind of politician who did ribbon cuttings at gas stations or shook hands at the diner. He worked from a downtown office most people never saw the inside of, and his face on campaign signs from 2 elections ago had faded into wallpaper nobody looked at twice. What Marcus saw that day wasn't a mayor. He saw a man who looked like he hadn't slept, whose hands shook slightly when he reached for his wallet, and whose eyes kept drifting to his phone every few seconds like he was waiting for news that terrified him. "Rough week?" Marcus asked, more out of habit than curiosity, as he popped the hood. "My daughter's in the hospital," Grant said quietly, the words coming out before he could stop them. "She collapsed at school yesterday. They don't know why yet." Marcus stopped what he was doing. He knew that particular fear. Rebecca had gone through something similar with their son years ago. A fever that wouldn't break. 3 days in a pediatric ward that had aged them both a decade. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it. "Go be with her. I'll take care of this. Come back whenever." "I can pay you now." "Pay me when the car's ready and you've got a clear head to count your change," Marcus said. "Go." Grant looked at him for a long moment, the kind of look that suggested he wasn't used to strangers offering him anything without an angle. In his 6 years as mayor, most people who approached him wanted something. A permit fast-tracked, a zoning variance, a favor for a cousin. He'd forgotten somewhere along the way that people could just be decent without an ask attached. "Thank you," he said, and it came out rougher than he intended. The repair took most of the day. A fuel pump that had been failing slowly for months. The kind of problem that always picked the worst moment to become urgent. Marcus worked through his lunch, missed a call from Rebecca about picking up their son from practice, and had the sedan running clean by 6 o'clock. He left it in the lot with the keys under the mat and a note. No charge. Hope your daughter feels better. Marcus. He didn't think about it again for nearly 2 weeks. Life in the garage didn't leave much room for wondering about strangers. There was always another engine, another family stretching to afford a repair, another late night balancing a ledger that never quite balanced. What Marcus didn't know was that James Grant's daughter, Emma, had been diagnosed with a treatable but serious autoimmune condition, one that would require months of care, but one she would recover from fully. And what Grant hadn't forgotten, even in the fog of those terrifying first days, was the mechanic who'd looked at a stranger's fear and responded with nothing but kindness, expecting nothing back. Grant made a habit, over the years, of remembering people who didn't want anything from him. There weren't many. He'd built a mental list without meaning to. The nurse who stayed an extra hour with Emma the night she was admitted. The teacher who drove 30 minutes out of her way to drop off homework. And now, a mechanic in a leaking garage who'd sent him home to his daughter without so much as a receipt. 3 weeks after that rainy Tuesday, Marcus received a call from a number he didn't recognize. A woman introduced herself as an assistant to Mayor Grant and asked if he'd be available to come down to City Hall on Thursday morning. Marcus assumed, reasonably, that it had something to do with a business license renewal or a code inspection, the kind of bureaucratic errand that ate up half a day and accomplished nothing. He wore his good jacket, the one Rebecca kept pressed for funerals and court dates, and drove downtown with a knot in his stomach that he couldn't quite explain. The lobby of City Hall was marble and quiet in a way his garage never was. He gave his name to the receptionist, who looked at her screen with an expression of mild surprise, and within minutes, he was being led not to some records office, but to the mayor's own conference room on the 3rd floor. James Grant stood when Marcus walked in, and for a moment Marcus didn't place him. The suit was sharper, the exhaustion gone from his face, replaced by something steadier. Then it clicked, the way a stalled engine finally catches. "You're the man with the sedan," Marcus said. "I'm the man whose daughter you sent me back to," Grant corrected gently. "Emma's doing well, by the way. She's back in school. Thank you for asking, even though you didn't get the chance to." Marcus sat, still unsure why he was there, still half expecting a permit issue to surface. Instead, Grant slid a folder across the table. For years, the city had been trying to figure out what to do with a defunct municipal lot on the east side. 3 empty acres, once slated for a shopping development that fell through after the mill closed. The city council had debated selling it to out-of-town developers for a strip mall, something that would bring in tax revenue, but not much else. Grant had never liked the idea. He'd been looking, quietly, for something that would actually serve Ashford. Something that would keep money and jobs inside the community instead of shipping them out. "I want to sell you that lot," Grant said. "Below market value, with the city covering half the infrastructure costs, on one condition. You build the kind of shop you've always wanted to build. Bigger. Modern equipment. Room to train apprentices if you're willing. This town needs mechanics who'll fix a car and not just a bill." Marcus stared at him, waiting for the part where this turned out to be a joke, or a loan he couldn't actually afford, or a catch buried 3 pages into the folder. "Why me?" "Because you helped a stranger in the rain and didn't ask who he was first," Grant said. "In my job, I meet a lot of people who help me because they know exactly who I am. You didn't. That matters more than you think." It wasn't charity, and Grant made that clear. The numbers worked for the city too. A mechanic's shop with training programs was a better use of the land than another empty storefront, and a mayor with genuine goodwill in a struggling town was worth more than any ribbon-cutting photo op. But it was, undeniably, a door opening because of a decision Marcus had made without expecting anything behind it. Marcus didn't say yes immediately. He went home and sat at the kitchen table with Rebecca, the same table where she'd once told him he couldn't fix the whole town for free, and they went through the folder page by page until nearly midnight. "You didn't do it for this," Rebecca said finally, closing the folder. "That's exactly why it's yours to take." 6 months later, Webb and Son Auto, his father's name finally back on a sign, this time above a building that didn't leak, opened on the east side lot with 4 bays, 2 apprentices from the local trade school, and a standing policy, quietly enforced, that anyone going through a genuine hard week could get their car looked at first and worry about the bill later. James Grant came to the opening. He didn't make a speech or bring a photographer. He just shook Marcus's hand, looked around at the shop full of people from a town that had spent a decade being told there was nothing left for it, and said the only thing that seemed to matter. "You built exactly what I hoped you would." There's a version of this story where kindness only matters because someone important happened to notice it. But that's not really what happened here. Marcus didn't help a stranger because he suspected who might be watching. He helped because that's who he'd always been, long before anyone with power walked into his garage. The door that opened for him was real, and it changed his life. But the man who walked through it was the same man who'd been quietly fixing this town, one car at a time, for 20 years before anyone noticed. If this story meant something to you, stick around. There are more like it here every week, about the quiet decency that doesn't wait for an audience to matter.